All right, and like I mentioned, we're gonna go through a few of this stuff. So some of this stuff, like I said, we've probably seen a lot of it. So I'm not touching through everything. If you guys have more questions, or if you guys have more like, you know, hey, like, can you talk more about that specific part? It's like, oh, I ran into that. Let me know. But I probably also like, I'm not assuming you know nothing. Like I'm assuming that you guys have had some experience with Git at this point, but I'll explain a little bit like what things happen. But the first thing I kind of want to talk about is kind of command line basics. And so this kind of follows in line with like when you're using a computer and using the command line. I don't know about you guys, but before you might have started this course, you might have never touched the command line. Always seen like, you know, the matrix looky kind of like black screen, stuff like that. And people get really impressed being like, ooh, like, look, you're like hacking or something. That's what I would always get when I would like be using the terminal or, you know, command line. And in reality, it's just another way to interact with the computer. It's usually called a command line interface, so CLI, versus a user interface, a UI, or a graphical user interface, a GUI or GUI. Okay, those are the things that you'll hear time and time again. So I'm kind of giving you guys that stuff. And it's really useful to actually know how to go through the command line. So actually, you know, I'm going to start sharing my screen since I have a little notebook for this. Here we are. Okay, cool. So you guys should all see my screen right now, except I can't see you guys. There you are. Okay, cool. So you guys can all see my screen. Thumbs up if you can. These people who are there. Awesome. All right. So first thing, command line basics. Basically, just know the reason why we're doing this is because you can navigate through a computer and you can interact with the computer, and you can actually do some really powerful things on the command line that you normally can't just do. Graphical interface. And note that I am talking about Unix and Linux, well, Unix based, which means if you have a Mac, it's basically your same exact. If you open a command line, it's or if you open up a terminal, it's going to be exactly this. If you are running Linux, or if you're going to a Linux computer, it's the same kind of concepts here. Basically, it's because they both run on top of Unix. If you are Windows, note that you will not have the same structure, which you might get some weird stuff. So we've been using Git Bash to do all our stuff. And Git Bash basically emulates, meaning that it basically kind of like, it kind of pretends to be a Unix kind of thing, which is why you'll notice in Windows, this kills me all the time, is that it's the backslash for Windows separating folders versus in Unix, it's the /. And that's kind of like a really quick giveaway so if you're a Unix system or in a Windows, you know, based system. So just know that some of the stuff on Windows, for example, Windows has something equivalent to a command line or like our command line, which is a command prompt. And then I think ends up being a window PowerShell now. Note that these commands, some of them are actually just like the other ones. Other times they're completely different and you can't navigate it this way. And know that Windows file structure is very different from Unix. Well, not very different, but it's different from Unix's file structure. So just be aware of those differences as we kind of go through. Okay? But the real reason why we're doing this is because you need to, you're going to log into another computer, a server at some point. You're going to be using a Unix computer as a data scientist at some point in your career. And when I say some point in your career, probably a majority of the time, as your data scientist, you're probably working with a Unix system. That's just kind of the reality of what things look like in the world. Okay. All right. So some of this stuff is like kind of things you've already seen before, but I'm gonna go through it. So first thing is basically navigation. So when we navigate through our file structure in Unix system, there's a hierarchical structure. So what that means basically, and I have a little visual here, hierarchy, right? Basically, there's some top point and then all the files underneath it. And then if you saw a more specific, usually we talk about like the root, basically like this backslash, okay, being like the root of the directory. So, and then for underneath there is our directories or folders, right? And usually this is like, if you go log into a Unix system, or Linux system specifically, you would have a structure that looks like this. For the most part, you mostly will go into home. There might be bin, stuff like that. But this is where all these, like, if you ever see like, oh, backslash bin or backslash, you know, home or anything like those things, this is some of the stuff like where that structure comes from. But just know basically there's a top point and then everything else goes in. So I can go from like, from here to home to Eve, for example, but I couldn't go from Eve to bin directly. I have to basically navigate outward and then back in, which we can do. And so since we do a lot of that times, like for example, if we're working within like this Eve directory, okay, we call that like our working directory, but like the directory that you're in, the way you go up is basically you signal that with 2 dots, 2 periods. And that says, oh, go up 1 level. And that would basically take us from Eve to home, okay? And then we could also go, it's like, okay, so we go from Eve to home, and then we could go over to up again, and then go to user, and then we can go drop in. So this is the way we kind of navigate. And so just know that there's double dots, which basically means the directory above, right? So up that hierarchy. We have a single dot, which seems kind of useless sometimes, but basically it just means that current directory, which can be really useful when we're specifying files and say, oh, all the files in this current directory, or run it in this directory. So just know if you ever see a single dot, basically just means that single part. And then a wildcard, this isn't used necessarily for navigation, but this can be basically if you're trying to like move a bunch of files, you can say, all right, everything, you know, let's say home, Eve, move everything in Eve. You can use a wildcard, this little asterisk right there, okay? So that's kind of like the structure of how things work in this case, all right? So just to kind of show you guys, let me go open up a new terminal. And if you guys didn't know this already, you can go to new and then terminal instead of going command prompt or whatever, oh, not terminal and all that stuff. So you can see here is that I'm in the command prompt here, or geez, I'm missing also the command line interface. So we're going to go through some commands that you can do. And again, these are probably some that you've already seen at this point. Just kind of know that that's what exists. So the first thing is pwd, okay, which is basically just saying, where am I? So if I do pwd, this will tell me, this is called its path right here. Okay, and basically you can see here that / users, vGuyslinger, developer, workspace, Flatiron. This is my specific setup on my computer, and that's how I kind of structure this on here. Okay, so pwd basically says like where am I? The next one basically is cd, which is like to move somewhere. So for example, if I want to move, I can do cd, and I know what this is going to be in there. There's actually another folder called let's see here, resources. So I can do resources. In this case, you can also see me tab. Okay, so the CD resources. I also know that there's another one called Flatiron school data stuff like here. And you saw I just tabbed that. Basically on the Unix system, you can tab and it'll autocomplete up until that point. If you have, like, let's say there's Flatiron school -data, or there's also Flatiron school -data science, it would stop at D and wait for you to put the next letter for it to know which place to go through, if that makes sense. But basically CD is where we can navigate through. So I can CD into here, and if I do pwd, you'll see that I'll have this path right here, and then it'll be /resources /Flatiron. You can see here, that's my whole path right here, okay? So if I wanted to go up one, let's say go up to resources, I cd double dot, right? And now if I put pwd, you see I'm in resources. So let me ask you guys, how would I get up to workspace? What command would I, or let's say if I want to get to Flatiron, this directory right here, how would I direct that?
cd dot.
cd dot, right? And if we check it, how do we check?
pwd.
Right. All right, cool. So people are awake. And you can see here we got in now. And if I wanted to go up to developer, has anyone got an idea how I get to that? So we literally have to go to cd, change directory, right?
Can you do 3 dots?
Let's try cd 3 dots, right? Nah, no such thing. But we can do cd 2 dots. And then what we can do is actually say, okay, if we cd into 2 dots, we get into workspace. And I want to go up again, right? So you can actually do a / again, and then dot. And that would basically say, oh, go to the next directory. So this would be like the directory up, which would be workspace. And then say, oh, go up the directory above that, and that would be developer. And you can see here, I can now in developer, okay? So kind of perfect. What if I do cd dot? What would happen there, you think?
Just stay in the current.
Stay in the current, so yeah, if I do that, I'm in the same exact one. So not really that exciting, right? So if I do like cd dot, you can probably guess what that will happen. I didn't go anywhere. So you can kind of confuse people if you want to. But like, again, this is not usually what we use in CD and stuff like this. Now, if I wanted to go into, now let's say I'm a developer, I'm like, okay, cool, developer, but I want to get into the next part. I could, for example, know I need to go directly into this part right here, Flatiron, or workspace, Flatiron resources. So one thing I could do, I could just literally copy this, and I'm doing it manually just to kind of show you guys. CD, and then I can paste it into here, right? And I can go CD, workspaces, Flatiron, resources, and I'll go all the way in. And you can see here, I'm in this point. If I try going into a directory that doesn't exist, you can see no such file directory. Okay, so some basic kind of like navigation stuff. One thing you might want to do though is actually know, okay, I know I'm in resources, but I want to know what's in resources. Because remember, PWD just shows us this. So next part is kind of exploring. And so the first part of exploring really is just ls. So you can think of ls like what's in here, okay? So we can do ls here. This will tell us what's in resources, right? And you can see here, there's a directory. I made a couple copies, which is why it's kind of weird like this. So I'm actually gonna cd into Flatiron because it's a little less. Oh, I actually didn't put this in here. One thing is like if there's you see how it's a long list of things and it's getting kind of cluttered, you can always type clear, clear, and this will basically just remove the history that's above there. So it's kind of a nice working space, okay? If you want the same command as you used before, you can just use the up or down arrows, and that will use like your history of your commands. And depending on your system, it might keep a history for like only 100 commands. It might keep a history of like infinite number of commands. Just know that you can go navigate through up and down, okay? All right, so I'm in Flatiron Resources and I wanna know what's in it. So I can do ls, and you can see here I have them big data, data engineering, data big science, all this stuff. One thing we can do is put in a flag. So right now, this cool is like, okay, I can see these are all directories. You can see here, this is a file because it's got a dot. If it doesn't have a dot, it assumes it's a directory, or I should say it shouldn't assume, it can be a directory. You can have a file with no extension, and that might be confusing. So one thing you can do too is, I like this, is I'll do ls-l. And this right here, this dash, is important in Unix command line. Basically, it's saying a flag or an option. And basically, it's kind of like, you can think of it like parameters when we put in for functions for Python. Basically saying, hey, here's a special thing I can do. And basically, ls-l will list the files in the nice orderly part. And you can see here, it would actually list these things nice and orderly. And then some extra information, which we won't get into right now. But basically, now these are like writing permissions, who owns it, let's see here, how large of a file it is, when the file was created, and all that stuff. So there's some extra information, but in reality, I just like to use ls-l because I can get nice lists like this versus, I don't like it when it's all condensed like this. It's hard for me to read through it, okay? So this lets me explore a little bit really quickly. If I wanted to go ls and I want to see, hey, okay, let's say, so remember we're in this directory. If I instead wanted to go look at what's in resources, I can do ls dot dot, and then dot dot, and now I'm in resources. And now I can see right here is the what's in, oh, sorry, I went up one to level. ls dot dot, and you can see what's in resources. And if I wanted to see what's above in Flatiron, I would do ls dot dot. Okay, and that's basically saying what's all within Flatiron directory, which is this cohorts, curriculum, interview, resources, study groups, mod projects. Okay, so there's a kind of how you can explore a little bit. I would say just play around with a little bit with that. Okay, and that's kind of like just to kind of navigate through a system really quickly. Okay, any questions on CD, ls, any of that stuff? Cool. All right. So the next part I'm going to go through real quickly. This is more or less to kind of explore within a file. So if you are looking at a specific files, you want to say, hey, what's in this file itself? We can use something like head, more, and less. So for example, where am I right now? Okay, so I'm in resources. You can see I'm in, let's go Python basics. All right, I know, we'll go. Sorry, I'm kind of thinking in my head real quick where we want to go. Oh, why aren't we? Okay, yeah, Python basics. Okay, and we'll go into coding, let's go into Unix, okay? And so there's this file right here, okay? So you can see this file, and this is the file that's actually this one right here. If I wanted to see what that file really quickly is, I can do more, and then command line basics, and it will actually spit out the top of that file. And that file, basically, if you actually try to open up a .ipnb and like a text editor, not Jupyter Notebook, you'll actually see the file kind of listed out like this. Basically, there's a bunch of information. Turns out it's all JSON, if you guys were wondering. So you can kind of see here, and I can navigate just going up and down. And if I want to get out of here, all I have to do is press Q, and then I'm out of it. So you can see here now I'm out, and I can go ahead and clear this part and do my commands. Okay. You also, instead of doing more, you could also do head, and that's there. and you can just see the first few lines. So for example, you just want to see the really quick part, like, hey, what's the first like 10 lines in here? You can also do tail, which anyone got an idea what tail would do? Take the opposite head, right? The bottom part. So pretty straightforward. Also know, this is kind of confusing, there's also less, which is just the opposite of more, which is kind of a joke, because basically it's the same thing as like more. It basically will just allow you to navigate through the file. Any question of why you would want to use like more versus just opening up the whole file? More, using either more or less. Like, why not just open up the whole file? Or at least list the whole file.
If it's like a huge one, like a very large one.
And that's the big part. If you have a huge file, if you have a huge data file, you might not want to load. Let's say your file is 100 gigabytes large, and you try opening up a 100 gigabyte file on your laptop's gonna not like that. So less and more in head and stuff like this allows you to kind of quickly look at, basically it feeds in chunk by chunk. So you don't have to load in the whole file in memory. So this is really useful if you're looking at big data sets and checking, hey, what's in this file? Or if you're just exploring really quickly of like, hey, like what's something useful? If you do want to open up the whole file, one thing you can do is use Nano. Usually is built into most Unix systems. It's kind of not the best editor, but if I wanted to edit that file, you can see here now, I can actually edit in here. I'm not gonna actually save this, but you can actually edit this and save it. And then you can see down here with this get help, exit, write out, all this stuff, you can actually make changes. So you would do something like control, these little arrows are control, and then control X. It's just the exit. It says, hey, you modified the file. Do you want to save it? In this case, I don't want to save it, but I'm going to just click the letter N. If you didn't want to save it, click yes. Obviously, Control C would be cancel. Okay, so I'm going to click no. So that's one way to edit it. One other editor I have, I like to use is VI. And if you ever get into VI, Vim, be very careful because you'll see right away is that if I'm trying to type, I'm just going to type like the letter. And let's see here. Let's say type. I'm trying to think of a good one I can use. If I try just typing randomly, you'll see that I'm not actually typing. I'm just navigating. It turns out to actually edit within here, you have to do certain commands like I or A and stuff like that. But if you ever get stuck in here in VI and you're like, I can't get out, don't panic. The way you get out is you basically press the escape key first. So you're basically out in editing mode. And then you do a colon. So you can see on the very bottom there is a colon now. And you just put Q and then this exclamation part or just Q and it'll quit out of it. But I just wanted to show you guys that in case someone ever tells you to get into VI and you're stuck, you can always just do colon Q. And I personally like VI. There's also Emacs, which I just don't use. But just know that's just a different kind of way of editing. But Nano usually, like if you need to quickly edit a file within there, you can do it. I would suggest is that on spare time kind of thing, like kind of a nice little thing to know is doing VI Emacs because their control and navigation can be ported over to other like other editors, and it can be useful to like edit some files when you can't use like, for example, Jupyter Notebook. Maybe you have to go to something. But usually if you have to do a really quick edit, you can just use Nano. That's on most systems, okay? Any questions so far on those kind of editing? I'm kind of going through it really quickly, and just know that's also listed right here a little bit, just to kind of remind you of what exists. Okay, sound good so far? Thumbs up? Okay, and then one thing I wanted to show is that you can also do cat, which is kind of similar to like more or less, but cat will basically just read the whole file. So you can see basically, if I look here, it read the whole file through, okay? Which isn't sound super useful, but it can be because cat also allows you to read it chunk by chunk. So it's not loading the whole thing in memory, it's kind of doing chunks, 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 it's stringing it together. But where cat really gets useful is when you actually want to make some changes. So I'll talk about that when we're doing here. So when we're making changes with files and folders, one thing is to create. So we can actually create some directories and stuff like this. So to make a directory, it's make directory or mkdir, and that's making a directory. So now if I want to say make a directory, and I'm going to capitalize it because I like keeping it consistent, is to make directory tests, and you can see now I have this directory test. So I can actually cd into tests, okay? So I can make directories however much I want. Another test. Okay, and you can see here. You can also make another thing, let's say test like this. I can also make the directory test, because remember, oh, see, I spelled it wrong. Remember that it is since case. It's not since case. Since case. So you just know that this already exists because I already put capital test like this, right? So just know that you can't override it, but you can make as many directories as you want. Okay, that's a really quick way to do it. Another thing you can do is make a file, an empty file, and I like doing this a lot. I think I've shown some people this before. I'll do touch, and then I'll do like test. Let's say file.txt. Okay, so this will make a file. And you can see here, this test.txt. If you do ls.l, you'll actually see that it's using 0, basically no memory. There's nothing in this file. It's just test file. In fact, if I try to do like more tests like this, you see that there's nothing there. Okay, cool. So touch is useful when you just need to very quickly make a quick file, just to say like a placeholder or something like that. Okay, or if you're going to output into something, you just want to have it there. Okay, so for example, I might do touch like a touch log. Okay. If I actually wanted to put something in there, I would edit it, right? And say, okay, like let's say, for example, I want to just put something in there. I'll use nano just to kind of show you guys nano log and just say, I'm just doing random stuff. And then I'll go ahead and exit. I'll say yes, save. And now we can see more log right here. Okay, cool. Follow along with me so far? Okay, so those are a couple things. Make a directory, and you can also make a quick file. The other thing I'm going to talk about is actually using cat. So cat, like I said before, cat actually will like just read the file out. So you can say cat log like this. Okay, not super interesting, right? But what you can use cat for is you can say cat log, okay, and that would read out the whole file. And then we can actually use this right here. And this basically will send all of this output, whatever is over here, and it'll output it over into a new file. So this is a little more advanced, but let's say we do cat log and I want to do into the file, what do we call it? Test file.txt, right? So remember test file.txt had nothing in it. And basically what happens here is I'm going to say, put everything that was in here and put it into this file. So now if I do this, you can see now is that test file will actually have the same exact contents, okay? What's really interesting though, is I can also do things, let's say, for example, I can append it. So let's say I want to say, well, okay, let me just add last bit to, or let's say whatever's in here, just add whatever's in log, read all the log and add it to the end of test.file.txt, or test file.txt. And you can see here now, if I do more test file, it basically had appended the rest of it on the end here. So I can actually keep doing this too. I can actually keep adding onto this test.file. And you can see here, it's just more, I just adding the end of this, okay? And just to kind of prove to you guys a little bit that I am kind of doing this, if I do nano test file, or yeah, I can actually do something with it. So I just put a little end here, right? And I have to do, you can see here, there's that actual end, right, of that file. And if I do, I'm going to append the log, right? Whatever's in log, append it to the end of test file. You can now see is that it's at the actual end. Okay, cool. Note, this is appending it. If I do cat log with a single arrow like this, this will basically completely erase everything that was in test.file or test.file.txt. I should name it something easier to say, but test.file.txt, and it will actually replace that completely. So now if I do more test.file, you'll see that this is all that's in there. Okay, and that's because it overwrites with the single arrow. So this is useful for like logging and stuff like this, is that you can very quickly modify files quickly. So this is just like some kind of cool stuff I thought to show that you'll see kind of some people, you'll see if you copy code, you'll see sometimes people use things like this and like echo and stuff. Okay, any questions on kind of what I just showed? Pretty good, cool. Okay, and you can see here we have our log, test out the text. And if you want to copy, you can also do CP, okay? And you can copy a log into, let's say, new log. See here, and you can see there's a log, a new log, and if you do more log, oops. Or if I do, oops, more new log, you can see the difference there. Okay. You can also copy directories. So I can also do copy, let's say, test. Oops. And I move that, and I copy it into other tests. Oh, you have to do. I forgot you can't do that. Sorry. Never mind. Ignore what I just said. Okay. You can copy it, but you have to just start putting flags. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. So that's kind of like how you can make new stuff. Now let's say you're like, okay, cool. Like I got all this stuff, but I don't want. I misnamed this. I needed to name test something else. You can actually do MV, which is move, and then test, and then you can move it to a new name. So for example, now it'll be test. Okay. You can also move things. For example, let's say I want to move test, and I want to move it a directory above. I can actually move that directory above one. So now if I do that, you'll see. Why don't you let me do this? Oh, it's a directory. Sorry, guys. Music test. Directory not empty. Oh. I'm trying to think real quick, guys. So let me go up one directory. And let's say oh no, I moved in here. That's great. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. The directory I'm in right now is test, which is why I couldn't move it. So you'll see here that there's already a test here. So let's move. Let's move another test. So if I move another test and then move it 2 directories up, you can now see that it's gone in this directory. Okay. But if I go up 1 directory, you can see now there's another test in here. Okay. So this is how you can kind of move stuff around. You can also move files. So if I did, for example, move test. So remember right now I'm in this directory right here. I'm not in test. So if I go move test, and let's say I move log, which is a file, I can actually move it to this current directory. That's where that dot comes in really useful. Okay. And so, okay, move the directory into here. And it can have that going on here. And now I can see that this will appear as log. Okay. So there's some ways you can kind of navigate and such. All right. Any questions on that? Looking pretty good. This a lot of times just goes like just playing around with it, figuring out how things work. There is a remove. I'm not even going to show you guys this right now, but no, there is a remove. It's super dangerous because basically, well, I'll show you real quick, is that if I do rm log, it'll remove the log and log is gone. This can be super dangerous because it doesn't give you any confirmation. Basically, if you do remove and then do the wrong thing, you can basically delete your whole file system, including like all the files on your computer, and there's no confirmation. So be very aware of this. Some people actually will purposely remap remove RM to something else, so people don't do that. I almost don't want to show you guys how to do it, but I'll show you anyway. Is that I'm going to show you how dangerous it is. rm.rf star removes everything. Wherever you are, just move it all down. In fact, if you wanted to remove your whole computer, that would be this right here would delete everything on your computer. Super dangerous, right? So don't do that. So I would say just be careful with remove. Probably don't touch it. It's my suggestion right now as you're kind of getting warmed up. Some quick extras before I get into GitHub and everything like that, because I want to get into that. Man basically is basically your help kind of desk. So if you say man ls, it'll show you all the different things you can do and stuff like this in your help directory and all that good stuff. And note that you can see this. That's fine. I pointed at it. You guys can't see my finger. At the very bottom of the screen, if you get that little colon right there, you can just put Q and that'll quit you out of that help desk. But man basically is kind of like your quick help. You can also do ls.h usually. That usually will help you. Oh, no, I'm wrong. Sorry. Help. No. I guess it doesn't have that, so never mind. You can just do man, and most files will have a manual to basically show you how to do stuff. Okay. Sudo basically allows you to have control over stuff. Just basically it means you're a super user. So just kind of be aware of what you can do with that. SSH, you'll see this commonly when you're trying to remote into a computer. I'm not going to get into that since we're not going to SSH, but no, if you want to remote into a computer, that's usually what you see SSH for. And then this one's my favorite, is bang bang. Basically, that's how it's pronounced. It's 2 exclamation marks. And basically, for example, it's just to run the same thing over again. So for example, let's say I do pwd. Okay, I can do ls bang bang, and that will show, it will just run the same stuff over again. So if I do pwd, okay, and then let's do pwd like this. And then I do bang, bang, it will do pwd again. This can be really useful when you're stringing commands together. For example, we didn't really talk about, but I could do like sudo bang, bang, and that means do the same command, but run with sudo instead, basically super user. Okay, so just kind of a quick way to recall the same exact command that you did. So one thing I could do, let's say, let's see if I can do this real quick, cd test. And then let's say, so I think new log was actually something there. Okay, so let's say I wanted to put new log into a test. So I can do cat new log. Okay, looks good. I can do bang, bang, and then I put it into new file. .text, okay. And so basically this runs the command right here. So I didn't have to actually type it. So if you have a really long command, you can actually just do this kind of thing and it'll output it out. Just something kind of nice to know. And no, just pronounce bang, bang. Okay, and just know that there's a bunch of options and flags that I hadn't even shown you. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of all command line stuff that I probably showed you, like probably about like 85% of what you probably do on a command line. Okay, any general questions? Look good so far? Cool. All right.